you some flyers. We're gonna, so we're.
February 4th, 2019, and I'm calling the school board meeting to session. All school board members are present. And at this time, it is in the left place. Excellent.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And if we could have our student rep read the opening statement, please.
My name is Emily Hickox, and on behalf of the school board, I would like to welcome you to our board meeting and thank you for attending this and supporting the work of the Anchorage School District and this board. The board thanks students, parents, teachers, staff, school business partners, and the entire community for your investment in our district with your time, your talent, and your tax dollars. If you are unable to be physically present for the entire meeting, you may choose to tune in to the Municipality of Anchorage's Channel 9 or YouTube to watch the live stream. Recordings of the meetings are also available through the agenda and board docs.
Thank you. At this time, I would like to approve the agenda. Is there any dissension on the agenda as presented? Seeing no dissension, we will move forward. We're going to be having our reports now, and Colonel Caranta, thank you. I just call you Colonel, but thank you for being here.
Yes, ma'am. Well, good evening, and thank you for having me again. It's been a fairly quiet month in January since the November 30th earthquake and the winter break, but there's two things I'd like to comment on quickly. I do have an upcoming meeting with our 5 principals on base for us to discuss installation support. We do that regularly in order for them to be able to meet with me and bring up any issues that we as an installation can handle and help them with on the installation. So we've got that coming up next week. And the second thing I'd like to thank the school district on is the recent ICE event where you canceled school. It actually helped us make our decision on whether or not we should keep the base open or do reduced manning. So we're able to reduce to mission essential manning to ensure the safety of our employees, our military members, and our families. So thank you very much for your coordination with that, specifically Tom Roth. And pending any questions, that's all I have this evening.
Any comments from board members or any questions? Thank you as always for your service, and
Yes,
we
ma'am.
appreciate you being
Thank
here.
you.
Thank you. Student advisory. Do you have a report for us?
We haven't met since the last school board meeting, so.
Okay. And your next meeting?
Is on February 20th.
Okay. And with our committees, we'll start with the governance committee. Yes.
Thank you. So I sent you all the January meeting summary. We reviewed a BP 6115 on ceremonies and patriotism, and after hearing from a Director of Fine Arts and Social Studies Coordinator, the committee voted 2-0 not to recommend the policy for a proposed policy amendment to send to the full board. We discussed BP 5123 on a proposed retention policy, and after discussion, it was sent, so we'll be looking at that tonight as a non-action item. And we talked about an outline for the rest of the semester, just so people can see the bigger picture and be prepared for the things we're going to work on. So the next one will just be reviewing your board policies for that board continuing ed, and those numbers are attached, and making any revisions ready from our last board appointment process. You know, we went through that big long process. Anything we learned from it, if we want to make any revisions, this will be your opportunity to submit those to the governance committee for any changes to that. We will be doing that at the next meeting, so this is the time to prepare that. And I don't know when we meet again. It's on here. February 20th. Yes, February 20th at 9:30 in there. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hildy. Ms. Mitchell. communications?
So we just had a communications meeting on January 23rd, and we talked about the,
Ms. Mitch, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but remember with these mics, and they seem to be a little louder
Okay.
tonight than usual.
can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. We talked about the Anchorage School District bond that will be on the April ballot, and getting the information out to the public as to what's on the bond and how to communicate the importance of passing that bond. We talked about, now that the legislature is in session, how to communicate our priorities to our legislators in person and through personal contacts here with board members. We also talked about doing some promotion around those things and other pieces around highlighting all the good things that are going on in the Anchorage School District and how to get that word out. We are hopefully going to be doing some asset mapping where we talk about key constituencies in the greater Anchorage community and making sure we connect with different groups within the community and are hearing what their concerns are and what their priorities are. And I also wanted to make sure that everybody here, I know everybody on the board knows that this is Visit Our Schools Month, but for the public, February is Visit Our Schools Month. You can go into any school at 9:30 on Tuesday morning, any Tuesday this month, and get a tour of that school. And on the last Tuesday of the month, which is February 26th, there's also an evening time at 6 p.m. So it's a wonderful opportunity. You can go to an elementary school one week, a middle school the next week, a high school the next week, and really get a chance to see all the wonderful things that are going on in our schools and just the variety out there. So that was pretty much what we talked about. And our next meeting is going to be on February 20th at 8:30 in the morning.
Thank you. And Ms. Snelling?
Finance Committee has not met since the last meeting. We tentatively have a meeting set for the 19th, but I think we are going to try and move that up to accommodate more conversation about the budget. So as soon as that is settled, we will get the date out.
Okay, great, thank you. So at this time, we are going to move into public testimony on non-agenda and non-action items. But at this time, I'll read a statement. And the board welcomes public comments on agenda items, both action and non-action, as well as in general. We value public comment as it both ensures that we remain aware of public thoughts, ideas, and concerns, and informs our decision-making process. We have a table front and center with 2 seats and microphones available for testimony when I call your name. And just a reminder, you don't need to be right up on the microphone. It makes it even harder to hear. These are very sensitive. You'll have 3 minutes to testify, and you may begin speaking when the timer appears to your screen on the left and begins the countdown. When you have 30 seconds left, the number will turn yellow. When the timer reaches 0, please finish your sentence. In order to provide equity to all that would like to speak, the board asks that there be no clapping after testimony, as it may intimidate others who are wishing to testify with opposing opinions. Additionally, it's not our practice that board members answer questions or engage in discussion with members of the public. This is your time to speak and our time to listen. The board will consider all information shared by the public, and when deemed necessary, issues raised in testimony will be referred to administration for follow-up. And at this time, I'm going to call forward, and bear with me because I'm having a tough time reading this writing. Yeah. Candy Jo Bracken and Alex Bracken. And Candy, you can begin when you see the clock to your right.
So thank you for your time. Service High School has had a contract for donated services for 5 years with Anchorage Fracture and Orthopedic Clinic, and their contract to provide our teams with athletic trainers appears to be ending after this school year. These services are in the form of game and practice coverage, as well as after-school office hours for our student athletes and coaches, injury assessment, treatment, and referral options that are provided at no cost to our school or to ASD. Service High School is unique in that we have not had a contract with OPA, which has agreements to help all the other Anchorage schools. Service High School was recently informed that the Office of Secondary Activities in the Administration Building signed a contract with OPA in August for exclusive rights to Service High School, along with the other high schools in the Anchorage School District. This was done without any input from the service athletic community or the parents and the student athletes. At this time, we are being told that next year we will not have the option of selecting our own provider, of whom we have had a working relationship with over 5 years exclusively at Service High School. We are very fortunate to have had some very dedicated athletic trainers that our students, coaches, and parents have made connections with. We have tried to reach out to the Office of Secondary Activities as parents and as a booster club, and we have not received any responses back. I know that they've been in contact with our administration at Service High School. They do feel that we as stakeholders, as the parents and the booster clubs at Service High School, that we are not stakeholders to, in regards to any contracts that are approved at the district level or have to do with our student athletes. We have some concerns and questions that as parents in the booster club of the football team at Service High School that we feel should be addressed. How soon will we be able to get a contract to compare services that will be provided with Service High School in writing? We would like to clarify that we are not losing our athletic trainer game coverage by going with OPA. We need to advocate for that comprehensive coverage, and that is what we're doing at this time. We right now have after school hours practices and all games away and home covered with AFOC. OPA at the time with the other schools do not have that coverage, and we don't see how that's going to happen at Service High School with adding another school to their list. We do have parents and students here tonight to give the personal examples of how they've had that relationship. Right now, currently, our trainer is working with our nurse on a regular basis and has just been invited on to be on a state board that is going to create the CTE protocol policy for all of Alaska. This is the consistency between school and athletic injury monitoring. We would also like to know how putting this bid out is different for as a free service opposed to a paid service. Did AFOC get an opportunity to bid fairly? And how come we can make school business partnerships at a school level, but we can't for donated services? Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And if I could call Sebastian, is it O'Farrell? Okay, and you just have a seat, and then Alex, you can begin when you see the timer.
So I'm a junior over at Service High School, and earlier this season I tore a labral in my hip, and the AFOC staff there helped me during the game, and they were thinking, oh, I'm going to be fine by that next week. I go into practice, and the staff there at practice notices that I'm lagging behind everybody, and they've been there all year noticing how I am lagging from my actual what I can do 100%. I was going around 50, so they pulled me out and put me into a physical therapy that in step by step take me through it so I can do it at my house, do it during practice, do it during my free time that my parents would not be able to afford if OPA would recommend me going to their clinic. And I've been able to do this physical therapy all year and build my strength up into my hips so I can play. I believe if OPA were to be there and not be there during practices and during games, I would not be able to perform as well as I should have because I would have been hiding a lingering injury. And that's it.
Okay, thank you very much. And I'm sorry, Valerie, I kind of missed you there, but if you could come on up, Valerie Davies. And then Sebastian, when you see the clock, you can begin.
Actually, my item, it turns out, is an action item, not a non-action item.
Oh,
Do I
okay.
need to be removed? Yeah.
Okay. And do you know what action item that is?
I think it's F11, the Chugaki River Education Facilities.
Okay, I'll put that down here. So I will call, I can't read the first name, but it's Newman. Thank you.
Thank you for letting me speak. I am a student at Service High and also a football player, and I've had many injuries during the football season, and they are really helpful because they always know when you're like injured, and they will always help. And having one out there is like helps us like always have someone there to like help us with our injuries, because injuries are very unpredictable on the football field, which I've learned from the past season. And sorry,
You're fine, just breathe.
it's very that's all I have.
Okay, well, thank you, we appreciate it. If you have anything else? Okay, thank you for testifying. And if I could call, looks like Michelle O'Farrell. And you can begin when you see the clock.
Hi, my name's Jaron. I'm a student athlete at Service High School, and over the season, it was my first season playing football, and over the season, I noticed that injuries are more common during practice than they are during a game. A game is much more fast-paced, but when you really slow it down, it's easier to get injured. As I've noticed on the field, I've had plenty of my own injuries during practices. I've seen many of my friends be hurt during practice and be fine during a game. And always having a sports trainer or somebody to help us understand our injuries and teach us how to prevent them after they happen on the field during practice and during games is very helpful. I've learned a lot. I rolled my ankle very bad during practice one day, and our sports trainer was there as quick as she could get there. Basically explained to me what I had done, how to prevent it, and over the next few weeks we had established a plan on rehabilitation for my ankle, how to make sure that I don't do it again, and how to take care of myself. Our sports trainer we're lucky to have because she was very attentive to what was going on around her, and she paid close attention to a lot of what was going on, and it was very helpful to have someone explain to us what we could do better in ways that we can prevent injuries and prevent hurting ourselves and others out on the field by teaching us safe football. And it was very helpful to have a sports trainer there. That's all I have.
Thank you so much. And if I could call up, is it Shane O'Farrell? And Michelle, you can begin with, hold on a
Sorry,
second.
get restarted, sorry.
Okay, my name is Michelle O'Farrell, and I am a parent of a student athlete, Ashton, you guys heard from earlier, who is an athlete at Service High School, plays football, and I can speak from personal experience. My son has had injuries on the field, and it's just a personal experience with our athletic trainer. Is he had his first injury, he hurt his finger, and I noticed that our athletic trainer tended to him with his hurt finger. And then after the game, she came up to my husband and I and approached us and talked to us about, you know, what she thought the injury was, and made suggestions of what to do. And just also there was times where, I mean, she helped out with little things with all the boys. I started to observe that she was always there at practices, and she was out there every game. And I went and helped out a lot during practices and camps, and I noticed that she just knew the boys' needs because she knew the boys. She knew, you know, who got hurt at the game or practice before, and she was able to know each of their needs and tend to them. And the team knew her, and they were comfortable. And I started to notice that she was always there, and I just felt a warm fuzzy every time I saw her, because I knew that she was there to take care of our team, and it just was really comfortable. And I just feel like she is a huge, our athletic trainer is a huge asset to our team and to the safety of our boys. Thank you.
Thank you. And when the clock starts over, you can.
Hi, Shane O'Farrell. My son is a freshman at Service High School. I'm a Service alumni. I have a niece and a nephew who both attend Service High School. All very athletic children. They all play hard, get hurt hard. Our athletic trainer is amazing because she knows our kids. I don't see that kind of commitment even, you know, in anything else really. That she's on top of things. She knows who they are, how they got hurt before. And it's not just in the football, you know. I go watch my niece play volleyball. She's in there too. She knows the girls. She knows all the kids. She's there for our children. Losing something like that would be terrible. So that's why I'm here to tell you how we feel, and hopefully we get the same kind of service if things do change, because it is amazing the fact that she knows our kids, she loves our kids, and we feel that. That's all I got.
Well, thank you both for testifying. Thank you. Then I have bowling. Khalil Bowling. Sorry. Did I say it right, or was I even close? Okay, good.
Thank you all for the time to be here and speak and advocate. I'm the head football coach at Service High School. I'm here to advocate on behalf of all of our sports coaches about the contract that was signed between the district and OPA. Some of the questions we have is we'd like to see a copy of that contract. We'd like to see how comprehensive the coverage may or may not be. I'm a huge proponent of having individualized healthcare. I think it's important in that the trust and relationships established with student athletes are of extreme importance. With our trainer, we have both preventative and rehabilitative services that are provided. We have a specific athletic training space in building that no other school in the district has. And these are still donated services. Just as the services provided by OPA are, ours with Anchorage Fracture and Orthopedic are also donated. I would argue that the coverage that we receive is unmatched by OPA, and I question whether or not that can be met with their limited staffing. We have 2 or 3 representatives in building 5 days a week. We are able to work with coaching staffs and with our student athletes, and as well as our administration, to ensure that there is a workflow and there are not kinks in that process, and to make sure that our students are safe prior to and while they are on fields of competition. We have full and complete coverage at both home and away events. This last season we traveled both to Soldotna and to Fairbanks. Our athletic trainer was present at both of these events. We did have injuries that involved head and neck. We had 3 student athletes this year that were out, spine boarded out of games. And a lot of the process of making sure that students stay healthy is to ensure that they have a continuity of coverage. And this is something I question, or perhaps I'm not informed about how OPA will be able to match that with our student athletes. They have indicated that at times they are understaffed while serving 7 other schools, and I wonder how they're able to meet the demands of adding an 8th school. We have been told and informed that the district is a huge proponent of community-based business partnerships, and I don't see any difference here. I think the individualized attention that our student athletes get on a daily basis is of utmost importance. So I would argue if this is a direction the district intends to take, I ask that we have a plan in place in writing as to how we're going to meet the standard of service that we've had for a number of years with our community-based business partner, with our new provider of healthcare, and if not, what options do we have as a school to provide services with outside community-based business partners?
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else that would like to testify? Okay, at this time, we're going to move forward. Oh, sorry. If you could state your name and spell it, please.
My name is Marta Ditzler, Martaditzler.
Thank you.
So I am a senior at Chugach High School. Recently, we have gotten the students from Greening High School. We have just been informed that Greening will not be open for the 2019-2020 school year, which is sad to hear because Greening will not have a building for themselves to build a community in. I was one of the students who was lucky enough to help show around students from Greening around our school so they would have a comfortable learning environment, somewhere where they could try and build a community. While our system has been working, I don't know how much longer we can build our communities together because students are missing out on opportunities that they would rather have if we didn't have the schools running together. We have limited our after-school opportunities for not just Chugach students, but also Greening students, which is sad for both students who are at athletic disadvantages or activity disadvantages, such as club meetings and places to go for special school-sponsored events. Our administrations, both administrations, have been doing a lovely job trying to work together so that students have not had so many impasses. I just know that next year, I've just seen all of the work that they've been putting in to have all of the problems not happen, and I don't know if the system can work for another year. I personally would like to ask the board to consider different options for Greening to go, such as moving Eagle River High School into Chugach High School, and then making Eagle River a 6, 7, 8, so that the students from Eagle River Elementary would have, all the 6th graders at Eagle River, so that there would be less stress on other elementary schools. I would just like you to consider different options so that both Chugach and Greening's communities can benefit. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Is there any other testimony? Okay. Dr. Bishop, we're moving on to superintendent update.
So I've just put up a brief agenda there, and wanted to share that we had a successful completion of our RTI MTSS conference, and I want to thank those board members who attended. It occurred January 25th through 27th with some pre-sessions, and the data had 49 of Alaska's 53 school districts travel to Anchorage to participate in this. And over 1,200 participants were teachers, and that's about 14% of the entire state. And near 400 people from ASD attended. So it was our teachers learning best practices. It's really kind of the rock concert of the century, if you will, in regard to educational leaders and in their field, whether it's behavioral or reading or math. The top names come to Alaska. We're able to attract them to get them to this, and as a partner with our state, this is highly successful. So I want to thank those of our own staff who participated to help make this a success. And later today, we're going to vote on a resolution for Black History Month, and so I wanted to share a little about our own, and this is Miss Jean Pollard, and she was a former counselor here in ASU since retired. She was instrumental in recognizing African Americans' contribution to building the Alcan Highway, and the law established a couple of years ago shared that this day may be observed by suitable observances and exercises by civic groups and the public. So that happened, a declaration by our former governor, and we now celebrate and learn about the Alaska Highway and African American contribution to that in the state of Alaska. So as part of ASD Summer School for Teachers in 2016, Jean, Dr. Ringsmith, Pam Orm, and other instructors facilitated a course that recognized the accomplishments of African American contributions. And as a part of this, teachers created lessons to help inform students about the ignored history and contributions of the African American soldiers. And during our cross-district training, we led teachers in sessions about the Jim Crow law in Alaska. And then in 2008, just recently in November, at the cross-district in-service, Ms. Pollard and Dr. Hartman were part of the team of instructors to, again, teach teachers about the Alcan Highway Project. She continues to volunteer in our schools as a former employee, but wanted to share that her passion helps to prepare our teachers and develop strong background knowledge necessary to teach students, quote, the voices that are needed to be uncovered to fully tell the story of Alaska's history. And we want to thank her, and I just want to share a little bit of that history in case you didn't know. Very quickly, this is a picture of soldiers constructing a log bridge in Alaska Highway. But as the story goes, in the dark days following the December 7th, 1941 Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor, American leaders were extremely concerned with the vulnerability of the Pacific Northwest and Alaska to Japanese attack. Japanese naval and air superiority prompted military leaders to propose a land route that would safely transport troops and equipment to Alaska to isolated outposts that otherwise would have to be supplied by air and sea. Wartime necessity put into action pre-war plans for the construction of a road through the Canadian wilderness from Dawson's Creek to Fairbanks. 2017 marked the 75th anniversary of the completion of this 1,685-mile-long Alaska Highway. And how many of you in the crowd have traveled and driven the Alaska Highway yourselves? All right, so we use this contribution. So of the 10,000 U.S. soldiers who built the Alaska Highway, it included 3,500 African-American troops who mainly worked from Alaska southward to Canada. And we want to honor the efforts of the soldiers who built the Alcan and the African-American contribution to that endeavor. We celebrate and honor Black History Month. Today we'll also honor Elizabeth Peratrovich, a major civil rights leader in the state of Alaska. In addition, we are participating as a district in our own Betty Davis African American Summit to be held February 16th. And individually we make a difference, and collectively we can make a change. And so I just want to honor Black History Month here at the board level, and to share some of the history that our history teachers are teaching, that our history teachers, our own history teachers, created for our state. And finally, didn't know the cups were already recognized as coffee cups with some coffee in them that you can pick up at the coffee store run by our students. But it's Board Appreciation Month, and so the district and I, the teachers, all employees, want to thank our board for your service with this short video.
I'm a teacher.
And Madam President, that concludes my superintendent update. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I don't even think I knew it was board school week or whatever, so thank you very much. I think we all do it for the kids, and we're just appreciate everyone else, and as everybody else, we don't think about ourselves, and we just think about the job and the mission.
I think you have a whole month of appreciation.
Oh, wow. Okay, Mr. Donnelly.
Yeah, I wanted to ask the superintendent if there was anything in the works working with the folks at Service about the trader.
I can share an update that I have. While the testimony was going on, I wanted to get an update as well. And so here's a little background so that the board understands that OPA has a longstanding contract with ASD to provide services, athletic training services to all comprehensive high schools. When principal at Service was there, his wife worked at AFOC, and they signed an agreement to allow them to provide athletic training services without understanding that the district had a standing agreement with OPA. And this was a former principal. Dave Whiting, at that time, would have avoided it, but at that time also, the two companies merged under one parent company, and so it became a non-issue. The two companies have since gone to arbitration and legally separated. This year, OPA asked to enforce the clause in their agreement to first right of refusal to provide services at Service. Service High was notified at the beginning of the year that we would allow AFOC to finish the term of their agreement for this year and then return to the services of OPA, which was the original contract that went out to RFP and the company that won the contract. And at the time, there wasn't a concern as long as we could finish, and now it's come to light that this year is coming to an end. And we have met with the leadership from AFOC, and Dave Whiting has explained the particulars to them as well. So this is more of a contractual issue with the district. The parties involved were informed and did know. It's just that now it's coming to fruition with the effect of the community and on students. So it's kind of a complicated contract issue, but I just received an update in regard to the discussions and decisions that have been made since last year.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Bishop.
Okay, it's time to vote on the consent agenda items. We have ASD memorandum number 106, the personnel report.
Second.
Oh, didn't see. And the consent agenda is approved with 7 yeas and 0 absent and 0 not present vote. Before we move to the action items, I just need to read a statement, and it's the procedures for the agenda item testimony as follows. An action item memo is first introduced by the Vice President, and if seconded by another board member, I will open the floor for public testimony. If you have signed up in advance or indicate you're interested in providing testimony, I will call you to come to the front table to speak. Again, you have 3 minutes to talk, and you will see a timer on the screen to your left to monitor the time remaining and inform you of when you need to conclude. After all testimony closes, I will open the floor for board discussion, followed by the student board representative vote, before finally calling for the official vote, and the voting results will be displayed on the screen. Ms. Mitchell?
I move that we vote on ASD memorandum number 122, the resolution in support of Black History Month.
Second.
Is there any public testimony on action item 122? Any board discussion? Student rep vote?
Yes.
Board, please vote. And that motion passes unanimously with 7 yeas.
I move to vote on ASD memorandum number 118, the resolution in support of School Counselor Appreciation Week.
Second.
Testimony, is there any board discussion? Yes.
I would just like to say that our school counselors do an amazing job with a very, very heavy load of students, and I very, very much appreciate them, and I think we should have, just with with our teachers, we should have School Counselor Appreciation Year.
And I would just say, I saw someone post on Facebook about how their school supported their counselors with doing something, and I thought it was very nice, and the other person said, oh, well, I doubt if I'll hear anything, and I said, well, let me tell you how much I appreciate you. So, board members, I would encourage you to do the same with our counselors, and I do believe we do have somebody testify. I didn't see you earlier. If you just state your name and spell it.
My name is Elizabeth Congdon McGee, CONGDON hyphen capital M small c, capital GEE. I was writing my speech back there, and Diane looks at me and she goes, they just called for public testimony, so here I am. Anyways, good morning, everyone. Evening, community members, school board members, and Superintendent Bishop. My name is Elizabeth Congdon McGee. I'm the Associate Executive Director of the Alaska School Counselor Association and an employee at Whaley School for 20 years, 18 with the Anchorage School District and a product of the Anchorage School District. I am here tonight to recognize National School Counseling Week, February 4th through the 8th. I am privileged to say that I am a school counselor at Whaley School, a distinguished school of mental health and wellness, one of 4 in the nation being recognized. I want to share that school counselors do great work with young people in our district. Some highlights that I want to recognize locally is that the Anchorage school counselors now have an AEA ad hoc committee that gives opportunity for us to meet and discuss important work that we do in our profession and concerns. That way we can partner with the district to make our services better for students. We have 2 Anchorage school counselors that were nominated and we're in the running for the Alaska State School Counselor of the Year. One was last year and one was nominated this year. We have 2 Anchorage schools working towards the national recognized ASCA model, and hopefully we'll be able to be recognized at the Seattle Conference 2020. ASD has developed a comprehensive school counseling program that was developed by Anchorage School District school counselors and being shared statewide. ASD school counselors have an evaluation tool that is based off of our profession and duties and put together by ASD school counselors. Students advocated last year for a need of a school counselors in one of our lottery schools and were given one for halftime this year. Statewide, some of the recognitions of school counselors is the Valdez School District school counselors and SRO partner and have a great threat assessment program that they shared at the state conference. Legislative researchers are now asking questions in Juneau about school counselors. 2 recognized ASCA model programs are recognized nationally in the state of Alaska, Skyview and Soldotna High. Nationwide, Colorado governor just put $20 million towards their school counselors. Arizona now has a ratio bill for school counseling. So my goals for the future is to continue to educate others on our profession so that school counselors in the state of Alaska and in Anchorage are not put in unethical situations. Hopefully change the law to change language from guidance counselors to school counselor, work on a ratio bill. I keep reminding myself that we have made baby steps forward. There is still much work to do, As a product of ASD, I remember seeing my guidance counselor twice a year to get my schedule. Today, school counselors do career awareness and exploration, school safety and wellness of students through community and school culture, mental health triage through school emotional learning because there's a waiting list, and many other services. So please take the time to recognize your school counselors.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So if there's no other board testimony or public testimony, I'll ask for a student vote.
Yes.
And board, please vote. And that motion passes unanimously with 7 yeas.
I move to introduce ASD Memorandum Number 115, a resolution honoring Elizabeth Peretrovich Day.
Second.
Is there any public testimony at this time? No public testimony. Is there any board discussion? No board discussion. Student vote, please.
Yes.
Board, please vote.
I move to vote on ASD Memorandum Number 107, acceptance of a grant award for the Alaska Educational Leadership ECHO Network Project.
Second.
Okay, is there any testimony on this memorandum? 107. Any board discussion? No board discussion? Student vote, please.
Yes.
Members, please vote.
I move to introduce ASD Memorandum.
Oops, hold on. Oops, sorry.
Jumping ahead.
And that motion passes unanimously with 7 yeas. Now, Ms. Mitchell.
I move to introduce ASD Memorandum Number 103, Alaska ESEA Consolidated Federal Programs Grant Acceptance for 2018-2019.
Second.
Is there any public testimony on memorandum 103? No public testimony. Is there any board discussion? Mr. Foster.
Question for finance, what's the outlook for next year?
I'm sorry, what was that question again?
The question for the finance department is, what is the outlook for next year for this group of grants?
Did you guys hear that?
Patrick.
As I understand, you asked for the outlook for next year. I'll be going to the Council of Great City Schools conference in March. Often they have the set-aside small group discussions where they cover a lot of their projections based off their understanding of things that are being worked. And so I suspect that I'll have a better answer after that conference.
Is any other board discussion or questions? Okay, at this time I'd ask for student vote.
Yes.
And board members, please vote. And that motion passes unanimously with 7 yeas.
I'd like to introduce ASD Memorandum Number 094, revision to School Board Policy Number 3311.1.2, the use of apprentices, second reading.
Second.
Is there any public testimony? I think I do have, is it Mike C. and John Woodard? If you'd come forward. I don't know which one's Mike. Okay. Mike, as soon as you see the clock, you can begin.
My name is Michael C. I'm a fourth-year apprentice with the Alaska Ironworkers Union Local 751. Thank you all for letting us come here and speak to you. As an apprentice, I've spent my whole career pretty much traveling from job to job, never being able to be at home, just going from anywhere from Ketchikan all the way to Dutch Harbor to Bethel. And with this proposal going through, it's only going to present more opportunities to be able to work at home and not have to travel so much. But not only that, it's going to open up more opportunities for us as apprentices to be able to go to the hall and practice welding or working on more certifications or more training, and be able to do that on our own time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And John, when you see the timer reset there, you can begin.
Thanks. My name is John Woodard. I'm Assistant Training Coordinator with Alaska Iron Workers Local 751. And we support this proposal to provide additional training opportunities on the job on the Anchorage School District projects for the apprentices that go through the program, and other registered apprenticeships for that matter. It provides a expanded opportunity. It promotes more learning. And in particular, we do a lot of recruiting with high school aged individuals, right? And so part of that is, part of generating interest for the high school age is work opportunities. And what a better fit for Anchorage School District being an education entity to provide these additional opportunities for the training programs for these different young apprentices that'll come in to work on Anchorage School District projects. I was at a job fair at Bartlett last week, and I had a booth just for Alaska Iron Workers Local 751, and there was a lot of kids coming up. Hey, what type of job is this? What are the opportunities? What's the outlook? And some of the kids were talking amongst themselves about, hey, is there any work repairing these schools from the earthquakes? Could that be a possibility? And I said, sure, that'd be a possibility. You just have to, be the right age and get into the program and things like that. So, that's kind of an expectation with them. And then we just recruited last year a guy out of the welding program that just graduated King Tech High School. And he would definitely benefit from being able to work on Anchorage School District projects, especially, he's a product of the Anchorage School District. So that'd be, that you should vote for this proposal, of course. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other individuals that would like to testify? Thank you both gentlemen.
Thank you.
Come forward, please, if you'd like to testify. If you would just give us your name and spelling of it.
My name is, excuse me, my name is Jonathan Medeiros. It's Jonathan. Last name Medeiris. I'm the training director for the Electrical and Telecommunications program sponsored by IBEW, the Electrical Union, and the National Electrical Contractors Association. I'd like to make just a couple of points in support of this increased usage of apprentices. The first is that, like many industries, the construction industry suffers from an aging workforce, and that we have many people retiring from the industries, and we're not replacing them at an adequate rate. So this would help to produce more training opportunities for apprentices and help that pipeline of skilled labor to continue to flow. The second is that, and I'm not saying this is the case, but there may be some concerns about the cost of increasing the usage of apprentices, and that it may increase the cost to the contractors and then also to the Anchorage School District. I don't believe that is the case. When you have mixed crew rates or mixed crews consisting of journeymen and apprentices, that reduces the crew rate. It allows you to not have to use higher skilled and more expensive workers for tasks that don't require that higher skill level. So I think for the community, for the economy, and for the bottom line of the school district, this is a good proposal and it should be accepted.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Ryan Andrew, last name Andrew.
Thank you to the members of the school board for allowing me to speak on this important topic of apprenticeship tonight. The apprenticeship model is one of the most effective ways for any community to have a strong workforce development program. Apprentices in the construction trades are able to learn a skilled craft which they have the ability to take with them almost anywhere. Apprentices typically do not pay a tuition cost, and in fact, they earn a respectable wage that increases gradually as they advance. My background is in the electrical construction industry, and my career began with an 8,000-hour on-the-job apprenticeship, the path to becoming a journeyman electrician. Since becoming a journeyman, I've had the opportunity to work in various capacities in Alaska, including as a classroom instructor for the IBEW NECA apprenticeship program. But the true beginning of my career can be traced back to the Anchorage School District. I decided to attend the King Career Center's construction electricity class, one of the best decisions I have ever made. Taking that class piqued my interest in the electrical field and allowed me a glimpse of the day-to-day job duties of an electrician. The training I received at King Career Center also gave me a great head start when I began my apprenticeship. I am very much in favor of the proposed change to the current board policy requiring apprenticeship utilization on Anchorage School District construction projects. This change to the current board policy would help ensure that there are career opportunities available to students once they complete their secondary education. Students transitioning into the workforce would be able to be trained right here in Alaska at a minimal cost to the individual. Recently, I've been very impressed with the school district's overall support of career and technical education programs, such as those offered at King Tech High. In my opinion, this proposed policy change is a great way to reinforce that support. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. Do we have anyone else that would like to testify?
Hello again.
And if you could state your name and spell your last name, please.
My name is Charles Scantlebury. My last name is Scantlebury. I'm wearing a sticker here today that says product of the ASD. I proudly wear that sticker, and I'm also here surrounded by brothers and other apprentices from other programs. I'm a third-year wireman apprentice with the 1547 in the IBEW. I'd like to reiterate what I said in the last school board meeting, that I am very amazed and very excited that this is an actual proposal, because, you know, I feel like the purpose of the Anchorage School District is to facilitate a culture of learning, and to do that and provide a memorandum to try to encourage people that do business with the school district on a construction level, and provide skilled trades and training to future tradesmen that will be building these schools. And basically every light that you see here has somebody's handiwork, and that's what they're selling. They're selling you beautiful structures, you know. And you know, I find it very fulfilling as an apprentice to be a part of these amazing projects, and I think it's an amazing proposal, and I hope you guys do pass this.
Thank you. Is there anyone who would like to testify on this action item? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, for the record, my name is Posey Boggs, Posieboggs, and I too would like you to take positive action and pass the apprentice proposal, or what you're working on. And I'd like to tell you a story about a ASD graduate student who was my student as a 12th grader. He wanted desperately to get into the apprentice program, but was afraid he couldn't read the manuals. This young man promised would give me 100 hours and not 1 minute more during his senior year. And I learned more about electricity than I really cared to know. We used only his apprentice manual and related resources. And now this young man well, I can't say he's my favorite, but he is. But, you know, it's just the way it is. He is a lineman. He's 30 years old now. He's been all over the world. He's worked in Costa Rica twice. No, Puerto Rico twice since the hurricane. He's in Saipan right now. He's been all over the United States. He's worked all over Alaska. In fact, there's a video, a National Geographic video of dropping Robbie off on some project via helicopter. So this is the potential that is wonderful when we give lots of opportunities and apprenticeships and support in any way that we can. In addition, you know, I can't come here without saying yes and give them lots and lots of reading instruction. So thank you.
Thank you. And if you'll just state your name.
Oh, do I need to wait for the timer?
No, just wait. Yeah, she just needs to get your name first.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Joelle Hall. Thank you so much for taking my testimony tonight and for bringing this ordinance before us, or this memorandum before us. This is very important, and we're really glad that you're taking it up. I think a lot of you know my day job is that I work for the Alaska AFL-CIO. I also have one kid left in ASD. I have a senior. I have a son who graduated last year, and I have a senior this year, so this will be my last year as an ASD parent. But tonight I'm here to testify in another role. Some of you may know that in my spare time, I am the president of School Bonds Yes. And in that role, in the last 5 years, I have worked together with the district and with a volunteer group of community leaders to raise hundreds of thousands of dollars, to pass hundreds of millions of dollars in bonds, to build schools in our cities. This city needs our schools. We must repair the schools that we've got. We must maintain the schools that we've got. I was so pleased with the response of the ASD during the earthquake. Remarkable. It's just remarkable what happened here. And even more remarkable, even though we lost 2 schools, was the stability of everything else. We're an example of what all cities should aspire to and how we should be building buildings for everybody. We build to the highest quality here. It's been the objective of School Bonds Yes all of these years. I know that when School Bonds Yes talks about building schools and replacing gyms for military kids at Bartlett, when we talk about replacing schools for people who need them in Girdwood because they don't have a school, we do those things because it's the right thing to do. When we talk about a system that allows us to put our own kids to work, the citizens are going to be just as responsive. This is something citizens will care for. This is something citizens will enjoy. They will like this part about the business that we all do together. And so I really encourage you to do this because I think it's not only a good business model, it's good for the students, it's good for the parents, and it's just a beautiful sense of closing the loop, right, between the investments you make and the investments that you get. You invest in your kids who build your schools that then stand for 50 years and withstand what Mother Nature can give them. And we should all be very, very proud of everybody who has ever sat in this room before you that made those decisions. And today, the decisions that you make and for your response and how well you handled that situation. Thank you very much, and I hope we do this and we just keep passing school bonds.
Thank you. You can go ahead and state your name,
Okay.
and then she'll start the...
My name is Dale Miller. I'm a business representative with Teamsters Local 959. So I actually didn't come here to testify about this, but when it came up, because I just listening to the other folks kind of gave me an idea what it's about. I'm actually here about the bus contract, but I don't guess ironic would be the correct word, but maybe unfortunate, and I don't know, a lot of you weren't here, but we actually had an apprenticeship program right within the Anchorage School District through the maintenance department. You know, decisions were made prior to y'all that we wouldn't go there, but I'm glad to hear that maybe we're going back that direction. We had an affiliation agreement with the King Career Center. Folks, kids that were taking classes there could get credit towards the apprenticeship program through the maintenance department. We still have an employee working in the maintenance department that went through that program, and and graduated, became a journeyman through the program that was actually put on and accredited by the federal government through the Anchorage School District. So I definitely would be interested if it, folks wanted to talk about reinstituting that program and get something going again there where that we could actually credit kids that go through the King Career Center with some time and accreditation into that program. It's just another apprentice program that would definitely benefit the Anchorage School District. So anyway, I guess just a short history lesson, but that's all I want to say. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there any other testimony on this action item? Okay, if there's no other testimony, I'm going to open it up for board discussion. But I did want to state, I don't think it's a conflict of interest, but I do want to mention it. My sister's son, my nephew, was an apprentice, but I just found out he's a journeyman now in Carpenters Union, but, so I think I'm out of the woods and I'm good. Yes, Mr. Donnelly.
Madam President, I also have a stepson who's almost a journey person also, but he has a full-time job, so this wouldn't impact him at all. I had an amendment that's been distributed, and I'd like to move that amendment with the exception of the language on the very last line where it begins "and," to the extent, I just delete it from that point on, so that it would be everything that appears here except when it gets to the last line, it says "program exists," there would be a period after "exists."
So do you want to move, are you moving to substitute this language for what's there?
Yes, well, yes, I'm just moving the language that I identified.
So, just to be clear, the proposed new board policy that we have in front of us is the one you're proposing? Yes.
Yes, with the exception of the last, the language that appears after the word "exists" on the next to
Okay.
last line.
So do you think he's moving to substitute this language and post it
Yeah,
like that?
okay. Would you like to speak to that, Mr. Donnelly?
I think we need a second before.
Oh, yes. Do we have a,
Second.
would you like to speak to that now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
We've made some progress. We did adopt the language as it appears up above in the amendment, the existing language. I think this is a much more comprehensive policy that I think is appropriate for the board to adopt. Certainly is a win-win. Apprentice programs save money, as the testimony indicated. When you're on a mixed crew, the apprentices tend to do the things that a journey person doesn't have to do because it's less technical and they're learning. It's certainly a bonus because so many of our students go on into these apprentice programs, and really a positive for the community to reinforce this. I think there was really important testimony I heard. There is a graying of the construction industry workers, and we are running into a shortage of workers here in Alaska that do the construction trades, and this is one way we can help facilitate training up our populace and our former students to fill those gaps that are being projected. Very serious lack of folks going into construction right now. So I think it's a really good policy that really merits board approval.
Any other board discussion? Ms. Mitchell?
Well, I'm just curious why you eliminated that last part of the last line.
Well, in adding that last line, I was trying to address any possible concern that there might be anything stopping a project from going ahead if there weren't apprentices available. But I've been assured that that's simply not necessary, that there are sufficient apprentices available currently for almost any project we'd want to do. And I also think that the practicality of it could be handled by the administration if any event like that did occur.
Mr. Holloman?
There's several things about this that I think are a good idea. Obviously, ASD participating in creating a pathway for highly skilled labor to train up in Anchorage is a benefit to the city, to the state, and it's in line with our responsibility to educate people. Obviously, we focus on K-12, but I think we always have to take a broader view of that. It also, I think real importantly, emphasizes that the high school diploma is really just a way station. It's not a destination. It used to be, it was just looked at as like, well, you either get a degree and you go into the labor market, or you go into college and you do something more advanced. But the truth is, if you're going to be skilled labor, getting your high school diploma is the first major step, and you're going to be back in school really for anything you do that you're going to do with any kind of seriousness. You're going to be back in school. Teachers know this because they're back in school all through their whole career. Engineers know it, doctors know it, and we need to emphasize to our students that that's also the case if you're going to go out and run heavy equipment, or you're going to string wires, or you're going to do any of these things on a level where you're paid decently. You're going to be back in school all through your career, learning how to do what you're supposed to do really well. It is a way of making sure the dollars that we're spending go to people from Anchorage, or at least from Alaska. That is just always a concern. I think it helps build the community when we do that. We partner with local businesses and trade unions to let them employ, in essence, right off the graduation floor, some of our best students to go directly into training in their local businesses or in the craft unions. And so it makes sense to me that we would partner to make sure there are places for those students to work as well. There have been concerns raised about the cost, and I think that what we're putting forward is fairly prudent. And after a year or so, when a number of contracts have been let, that purchasing could come back to the board and talk about whether or not this has been restrictive or complicating or has created issues. And it may be that it does take some extra work. I think anytime you add language, you add a little bit of complication, but it seems like this should be very manageable and pay back big dividends. So I'll be voting yes.
Ms. Hildy?
Yeah, we did consider, this last summer in governance committee and talked about it in depth and heard from some of the administration, so I would appreciate hearing from them as well. But I am concerned about that we have a state report coming out just next year that really analyzes this in depth. It seems very premature to open ourselves up to really potential liability. Anytime we put shall into something, there's a compliance factor. I don't see the harm in waiting until we have this very thoroughly vetted review of what the effect is on these very large contracts. Certainly apprentice programs are tremendous. I love the partnerships between our district and them, and as much as we can support and promote that opportunity for our students, that's terrific. But I'm not, I want to be fully informed on what we're doing here, and we have that information coming in just a year. And I've heard liability concerns, and that's a red flag for me. We don't have money for increased liability risks. That's not the area I want us to be focusing on right now, is trying to mitigate another area for liability. So if I would appreciate hearing administration comments.
Are you asking?
Sure.
So who would you like to hear from?
Dr. Bishop, do you have any comments on this?
Through the president to Member Hildy, I request the Dave Whiting, our purchasing officer, to come forward, and he works under the guidance of Chief of Operations Tom Roth.
So through the board president, to members of the board, we had an opportunity at the last board meeting to make comment again. Our place, our position is not to offer an opinion. We've had the opportunity to communicate with board members in the past what we believe will be the economic implications of this. I do want to make comment though. With regards to the language, again, it's not to express an opinion, but I think is to really kind of state what I think is more factual outcomes
Again, not complaining, but I want to be clear. So the threshold we're talking about, $100,000 for any capital project. I mean, that's every capital project that we do, and we're not talking, just a couple of weeks, couple of months. But these projects, generally speaking, go through a design phase and execution phase. So every project is looking at 2 years, and it's through all phases. So it's through the procurement phases, it's through the execution. So the question of compliance, making sure that to meet this 15% threshold, that the contractors are compliant with the board's intent. Somebody's got to do that. And also, if to be found not compliant, what are the decisions that the district would make based on board intent to ensure compliance, or if not compliant, do we terminate contracts? Do we postpone projects? I mean, these are just the practical issues that are part of this decision. We are prepared to do that, but I think it's important to make comment, and it's not intended to convey any opinion. I mean, I think we all recognize and appreciate the importance of apprentice programs in our state. We absolutely do, and it's great. But what we're talking about here is something different. So that's my 2 bits on this. I'll pass over to Mr. Whiting.
Thank you, Mr. Roth. And the same as Mr. Roth said here, I'm not here to give an opinion on this issue, just to describe how you could implement something. As I spoke about at the last board meeting, typically when you wish to incentivize something, you create what is called a bidder's preference. Now this is a very, it's an industry standard way to incentivize an activity. It can be implemented efficiently, it's legally defensible, it will not increase time to solicit and award bids, does not increase administrative costs significantly or compliance costs significantly. Pretty much, it's a fairly simplistic, a bidder's preference. For evaluation purposes, you would in essence lower a bid. Say if you had a 1% bidder's preference and you had a $100,000 bid, the bid that qualified would be lowered to $99,000 for evaluation process. And then when you award the full amount. Now that's a very simplistic preference, simplistic way to do it. There's no compliance after the fact. There's, at the time of bid, it's very simple to implement this. When you get into what the language that is described here, there's a host of issues that come up on the compliance side. And also the language is very zero tolerance. So what we're saying here is that a bidder may not bid at all for ASD work unless they meet the 15%. So it is a zero tolerance. It is not awarding points, awarding preference that you typically see in procurement. It is disqualifying, or in essence debarring, a bidder for not meeting this qualification, which could be construed by state statute or federal statute as an unduly restrictive requirement and could be challenged. Typically when you wish to incentivize, you provide points to allow bidders to score higher and get a leg up on the competition for complying. You typically don't, in a zero tolerance way, disqualify them from competing. So that is why for your consideration, at the last board meeting, I asked that this could be looked at as a bidder's preference, because that's typically what you see in federal, state, or municipal procurement. You offer a preference. You can look at the state of Alaska. They have all kinds of preferences for many different types of activity. There's Alaska forest preference, there's Alaska bidder's preference, there's a recycling preference. There's many of these things. That's really typically the way this is handled. You don't typically see a zero tolerance. In the very few programs throughout the United States that I've seen that have something similar to this, also they have a state compliance factor in place where the state has a program and they assure compliance. So the agency would contact the state and say, is this bidder in compliance? And that bidder is responsible to stay in compliance with the state. In this case, you're putting all the compliance burden on the Anchorage School District facilities, CP&C, and purchasing department, which will cost us more money administratively. So again, I'm not opining on your intent here, I understand, but to me, the way to implement it would be the industry standard best practice for procurement instead of this more zero tolerance approach.
Did you have any other? Mr. Holloman?
Through the chair, obviously as a board, we like to dream big dreams, and then we expect you to make administrative regulations that make them real and functional. I'm wondering if it's possible to put the onus on contractors by putting the requirement in along with stipulations about what happens if they fall under the 15% margin.
Well, let's look at that. What would happen? We're a year into a contract. We're on a critical path. We need to deliver a project. They're out of compliance. We terminate the contract. What do we do? Do we terminate the contract? If we don't terminate the contract, we're going to get sued by somebody else saying, hey, why did you award to that contractor? They're out of compliance.
And I wouldn't suggest that, but rather any number of kinds of contracts. If you come in so many days late, you don't terminate the contract, but there's a built-in calculation. This is what you do because it got delivered late.
You can assess liquidated damages. You can call in payment performance bonds. Often leads to litigation.
Mm-hmm. I'm wondering if this is something where purchasing can come back with language about how you'll implement this in contract. And I don't think any of us expect a zero tolerance, and that we understand the real world, things don't always go well. You just allow for the fact and state in advance what the result is, if it's 13% or 10%. And usually you just factor it in dollars and it reduces the value of the contract by a certain amount. It seems like there's a practical way to deal with this without creating that much uncertainty.
Well, I will say you could certainly put in contracts there are liquidated damages. There are penalties in contracts. That is done, again, not typically done on a standard basis on $100,000 contracts, could be viewed as a little bit restrictive. Like I said, the most simplistic way is to implement a preference. And you're right, purchasing will have to figure out, no matter what is passed, we'll have to figure out a way to make it work because we have to deliver a large volume of construction projects for Mr. Roth and his team. So.
Thank you.
Any other board questions? Thank you, gentlemen. Any other board comments or Ms. Snelling?
I think I am concerned with the phrase shall require, as opposed to the state's language of shall strive to require. I mean, there's some flexibility in there, even in that language. And I'm concerned with the $100,000. I don't even know if it's an easy number off the top of Mr. Whiting's head to say how many projects were over $100,000 or how many were over $1 million. I mean, how many projects would this impact? And to Mr. Holloman's question, what is the penalty? What price does the district pay? And because it's a board policy, it's not just a contract that might be in violation, that's one thing, but then it's a board policy that's being violated. What is the penalty, and what position are we putting ourselves in, and what's our threshold that we want to take, if it's something like that. I don't know, it's a lot of questions in one.
Through the board president to Member Snelling, I think one of our other board members had asked me to look at that last week. I think we were looking at about 30 projects. I did a sampling of last fiscal year's, about 30 projects that were over that mark.
Out of curiosity, what's
out of what? What percentage? 30 out of 30, 30 out of 100,
Or,
30 out of
over
1,000?
100,000 construction projects.
What was the total number of projects we had?
30.
And then all of them were over 100,000? Okay, so 100%
Oh,
of our
no, I'm
projects?
sorry. Many of our projects, I did not count the ones under 100. So I'm sorry, I don't have the total number of projects.
Okay, so the N is 30,
yeah.
but the percentage we'd have to come back on.
Exactly, sorry. And the point I would like to make that Member Snelling made here is that any other program we've seen that has implemented anything like this had started something like this at $2.5 million. We've never seen anything, 100,000 is quite a low number to start at.
Yes, Ms. Snelling?
There's language in here, shall only apply to crafts for which, there's approved apprenticeship. What crafts, what would not be part of this?
I think what they're indicating there, and again, there's probably more folks in this room that are more expert on this issue, but they're talking about the journey, the typical journey crafts you'd see, outlined in Title 36. That's what they're referring to.
And then one more. The way it reads, no less than 15% of the total hours, so does that mean it can only be measured at the end, or is it something that would be measured during the course of a project, or how does that?
Great question, and that's really, as Member Holloman was saying, that the burden would fall on purchasing and CP&C to try to figure out a strategy for this. I've been thinking about it for a while, and it is challenging when you have often any little technicality a bidder can find issue with. They will protest, and they will protest the content of a solicitation. They will protest the award of a solicitation. They will protest issues that occur after award. So this measurement, this compliance is pretty complicated. Do we hire, I talked to Mr. Roth earlier today, and I said, do we need to hire a position as a compliance officer to monitor these projects? So what they do is, at the time that the bidders bid, they claim that they're bidding, and they offer 15% apprenticeship utilization on their projects. They must sign an affidavit saying, we pledge to do that on this project. Then within 3 or 4 months, we send out our inspector. They go inspect them. We have them provide payroll to prove that they are complying all through the process. Then what happens when they fall out of compliance? Do we assess liquidated damages to them? Do we disbar them from bidding in the future? And also the fact that what if a contractor, their business model doesn't really, isn't structured for that, then that means they can't bid on ASD work anymore. So they would, you're telling a contractor that they have to do this. And again, I keep hearing that it saves money. If it saves money, people will just do it. That's how business is. Something that saves money, you don't have to force them to do. And again, I'm not opining on the rightness or wrongness of this. I'm just talking about logic. If you tell me something saves money, you don't have to force me to save money. If it saves you money, you do it.
Okay. I appreciate all of the input and the public testimony. I think the way this is written is way too tight and rigid. But I'd like to continue working, whether we do it now or we do it, over the next couple weeks or whatever, to come back with something that does work, because I support apprentices. I support, the education, after, we let them go. And so I want to see something happen, but the way this is written is way too tight, that I think would open ourselves up to a lot more complication that I don't think we can afford right now.
And in that respect, could you be more specific on what you would be looking at as far as changes?
I'd added 1 0 to the 100,000. I'd make $1 million. I don't think it needs to go to 2.5, but I could be more comfortable with $1 million. And the shall require, I need a little bit of flexibility in there. That's the kind of flexibility I would look for.
Would you like to make an amendment to this at this time?
Yes. I would just caution against us from creating amendments to very complicated motions without we're going through a more deliberate analysis and consideration of the consequences of it. If it's something we want to do, talk to the people who are already working on that state level project, and if you want an ad hoc committee, maybe that's something to consider, but not just make these giant, potentially, we don't know actually, maybe it isn't a big deal, but the liability is quite frightening to me. But to be more thorough in our understanding of if that's what the board wants to do. But
Mr. Donnelly?
While Member Snelly's thinking about that, if you look at the current administrative regulation that implemented the existing policy, you would see that the administration picked the 15% guideline. And this policy conforms with the policy that the administration actually picked. And when they had the option to draft that administrative regulation, they could have drafted a bidder preference to implement the existing board policy, but they chose not to. They went with a 15% of labor hours performed by apprentices enrolled in federally registered or state-approved training programs. So that's absolutely consistent with what this new board policy says also. Additionally, I do believe there are examples, made it sound like there were no examples of a 15% threshold. And I don't want to say something on the record that's inaccurate, but I do think there are examples of percentage goals out there. And I believe one of them is the Alyeska pipeline agreement. And if I'm wrong, I'm very sorry, but that's my memory of it at this time. And other types of agreements like that, you do set percentage thresholds rather than simply bidder preferences involved. These types of preferences for or incentives or directives to utilize apprentices. So this is not inconsistent with the existing administrative regulation that was crafted by the school district, and it's really a change in the threshold amount. I just also point out, right now the debate's about the amendment, and if this amendment was to fail, then we would go back to the main motion. But I do support the amendment as drafted because I think it's an improvement, but on the existing administrative regulation, while utilizing the same structure of that administrative regulation as it exists now.
So one moment, please. I do have here in front of me, just so there's clarification, whoops, sorry, I can leave it there. This is, I'm looking at our board policy, and it says use of apprentices. It is the policy of ASD to promote apprentice programs and to encourage construction contractors that perform capital maintenance and construction for the district to employ apprentice enrolled in a federally registered or state-approved apprenticeship training program. And then the AR associated to this, AR that is associated to this says, consistent with State Administrative Order number 278 dated 10 November 2015, for district capital construction projects exceeding 2.5 million, the contractor shall strive to attain not less than 15% of labor hours performed by apprentices enrolled in a federally registered or state-approved training program. Okay, Ms. Skeldig, I just wanted to give
sure,
that.
and I just want to clarify that the administration didn't draft the language of the AR, it's just a copy of the state, as we discussed in our governance committee. It's just copying what the state has already vetted as being, and it's a strive to attain language, it's a 2.5. That's why I talked about waiting until the state reviews any potential changes, because it is complex. And I think we've already heard a lot of warning signs on some of the potential liabilities and complications that could arise in that none of us do construction bidding, and I'm inclined to defer to people who are trying their very hardest to get great contracts for us so that we can keep money going into the classrooms and wait to hear. We've heard alternatives to defer the preference, what was it called, the bidder's preference, you know, a more less restrictive option, so we've heard alternatives that might, show support and encourage apprentice usage, which is a great goal, without increasing our liability exposure or the additional burden on administration, which we've talked about it being quite lean right now as it is.
So I would just say if we're already have that in our AR, whether it's state or ours, and we're all already doing the 15%, how are we're not?
Madam President, the differences are, if I might, what Member Hildy suggested, that the language is shall strive, which is a interest that came up, and it's 2.5 million. So
Right.
there's differences and some similarities. There's some commonalities and some very big differences, and those are the delta for which we're discussing.
They're not identical.
Mr. Donnelly?
Thank you. I apologize for speaking again. There was one point I forgot to make, and that is these contracts are subject to the Davis-Bacon or the prevailing wage law, the state's prevailing wage law. So there is an audit performed, there's reporting required already that identifies what hours are done for what and ensures that, so there's already forms and reporting available. It isn't something new the district's going to have to require.
Mr. Foster?
Thank you. Couple of notes. One, having worked in the construction industry for some time, I appreciate the effort and the sort of the comments on both sides. But let me return to why I think this is actually a valuable policy to put forward at the board level. One, I think it makes excellent sense for us to promote apprenticeship programs, because that's a great on-ramp for our children who are coming through the system to lead them to success in life. And that's a really important community benefit for the folks that we graduate. I think it's also a community benefit from the folks in the industry trying to hire skilled labor, because we've heard from Anchorage Economic Development Corporation that some of the challenges that their membership face have to do with not enough people in the construction trades. 3, having looked at the cycles of pricing in the construction industry over decades, including some consulting work for the Denali Commission, working with various contracting agencies, apprenticeship programs build a local workforce and mitigate against higher prices when you have a construction uptick. Like, for example, after an earthquake and you've got to rebuild. So you want to also acknowledge that there are capacity building elements to this that are very valuable to the community that do mitigate against local shortages and create capacity and effectively even out price spikes. So I think there's some significant benefits. With respect to the total labor hours worked, 15% I think is a very reasonable number, given not only the state administrative order and the analysis there, but looking at other project labor agreements. For example, out of Juneau, with a 20% number in that particular labor market, I suspect we'll find that the Anchorage labor market will do fine at a 15% level. Finally, with respect to the $100,000 threshold, I think that's an interesting question about how small you go. I don't have an independent opinion about that, but I think this certainly gets it started, and to the extent that we have a particular challenge in those lower numbers, I would be open to revisiting that. But I do think the presence of an apprenticeship program and the requirement for hours makes a lot of sense for our community and for our kids. Thank you.
Mr. Foster, would you like to make an amendment to that dollar amount, or you want to leave it as such?
Don't have an opinion about it. So
Okay.
it's fine going forward.
I'll just say that I support this. I think it's the right thing to do. We are always encouraging our students in programs to complete or further their education and into the trades. We hear all the time that that we're not, or we don't have enough of the skilled laborers in our workforce, and this is one way to ensure this. I do believe that, as we've said before, sometimes we don't always do what's easiest for the administration or the teachers. Sometimes we have to make decisions based on the best interest of our students and moving forward. And I believe this is one of those times, and I think that with change, there is always a little bit of hardship, and I don't see that truly as a factor in not voting for this. Are we ready to vote, or is there any other discussion? Okay, student vote.
On the amendment, right?
Yeah. We're voting on the amendment.
Yes.
Board members, please vote.
And this actually was substitute language, so I guess we could do the main motion as amended, yeah, with the substitute language.
So this motion passes with 6 yeas and 2 nays. Now moving on. What?
5 yeas and 2 nays.
Oh, sorry, 5 yeas and 2 nays, I can't add. That's pretty bad. Anyway, it's 5 yeas and 2 nays.
So,
Now we move forward. Main motion as substituted.
Yeah, I would say, since we missed it the first time around, just say as substituted. Will that work?
Student vote?
Yes.
Board members, please vote.
Yeah.
Same language, we're just,
yeah.
yeah, procedural. And that motion passes with 5 yeas and 2 nays. Thank you. Okay. Ms. Mitchell, moving on.
That's a long list.
I would like to move that we discuss ASD memorandum number 100, award of contract of communication services, a wide area network and internet services.
Second.
Is there any public testimony on memorandum 100? Okay, no public testimony. Is there any board discussion? Okay, at this time, student vote, please.
Yes.
Board members, please vote. And that motion passes with 7 yeas.
I would like to move ASD memorandum number 109, school board stipend and benefits.
Just move to.
Second.
I move to amend, do I just move to amend, or I don't think so.
You can move to.
Okay. I move to amend the agenda to remove board ASD memorandum number 109, school board stipend and benefits.
Second.
Second, okay.
We're, state law and municipal ordinance prevent governing boards from voting on decisions that they have a financial interest in, so I reluctantly share that. So we'll just stop there.
Okay. So not necessary to vote on something we can't change.
You are not able to without violating the conflict of interest.
Thank you. Okay, that has,
So we have to vote to amend the agenda to remove it.
yes.
And I'm not sure why it's right here. Hold on.
You could just ask if there's any objection.
Yes.
Yeah. Is there any objection to that?
I'm confused about what's on the floor.
And I move to amend the agenda, to remove this item. If we don't remove it from the agenda, we can only abstain from voting on it.
Understood. Thank you.
Is there any dissension? No? Okay.
So you want me to mark it unanimous?
Yeah, we'll move that forward then. Thank you.
I move to discuss ASB memorandum number 111, resolution in support of forming an ad hoc committee on student health, wellness, nutrition, and learning.
Second.
Is there any public testimony? Is this the one you wanted to talk about, Valerie?
Number
119, okay, thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to testify on memorandum 111? Okay, is there any board discussion? Ms. Hildy?
Are you gonna identify who is on this at this time?
Yes, once we vote on it, this resolution. Okay, there's no further discussion. Student vote, please.
Yes.
And that passes with 7 yeas. And I think what I'll, just for purpose of discussion, at the end of our session, I will appoint those committees and we will have chairs and committee members.
Okay, I move that we discuss ASB memorandum number 119, Anchorage School Board resolution in support of an ad hoc committee to study strategic options for Chugiak Eagle River education facilities and programs.
Second.
Okay, and Valerie, I think this is the one you want to speak on. Is there any other public testimony on this memorandum 119? If so, please come forward. And Valerie, you can begin when you see the clock to your left there.
My name is Valerie Davies, and I come before you as a parent and the PTA president and a community member at Birchwood ABC. As you know, we've combined with Eagle River Elementary at our school because of the earthquake, and I just want to tell you, it's not working. We need to come up with other alternatives for next year. It's not working for our students or for our staff. There are a bazillion reasons. One of the things of Birchwood ABC is we're an alternative education program, and in being so, we have a school philosophy that we are very strong in and believe in, and it is higher standards for academics and behavior. And those are not things that are happening at Eagle River Elementary, and it makes it hard to have their population of students intermixed with our student population. I've heard many rumors about what might take place next year. I don't know that any of those are true yet or not, but my suggestion at the moment that I can come up with would be to put the Eagle River students, Eagle River High School students with the Chugiak High School students, and use the the Eagle River High School building for Gruning Middle School and for Eagle River Elementary School, if it could house both populations in one. I think that would solve a lot of the problems that are happening in the community right now with the combination. Our health and art teachers are teaching off of carts right now into the classrooms, which makes it hard for the regular teachers to utilize their prep time because they need to leave the classroom and go to other places that are also overcrowded. I don't have a PTA room right now, and because it has become a conference room. And so now we have a lot of parents that are doing volunteer work for PTA working in the teacher workroom, and the teachers need to be in the workroom because they can't work in their classrooms. We're very overcrowded. There's also a lot of different behavioral issues. Their school doesn't have as high of behavior standards. We have teachers who are now closing their curtains at lunchtime when the other students are out on lunchtime because of the behavior that takes place on the playground, and not wanting our students to see that that's okay, because it's not. We have a higher expectation. And I think overall the whole ASD school district should have a higher expectation, but it doesn't. There's different things that I've heard that could happen next year with academics. Our academics are different curriculum. We do Spalding phonograms and like Mad Math Minute and a Half and I'm out of time. And different things that would not work if their students became part of the Birchwood school next year. It would be very tough on the students to be able to catch up on those things and learn those things academically.
Thank you. And if you could state your name and spell your last name, please.
Sure. My name is Kai, K-A-I, Binkley, B-I-N-K-L-E-Y, Sims, S-I-M-S. Madam President and board members and Dr. Bishop, thank you for considering this memorandum number 119 tonight. I just wanted to quickly show my support for involving the community of Eagle River in this huge decision. There are, I know, a lot of little details to work out, a lot of logistical details, and we have an incredibly informed and involved parent community, and I know that everyone will be very in tune to what's going on with this decision and interested in being involved. So I support this this committee, and I hope you will approve it. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public testimony on memorandum 119? Hearing none, is there any board discussion? Mr. Donnelly?
I'd just like to ask the superintendent, what can we do to help preserve the ethos at Birchwood ABC? I'm obviously a strong advocate for the ABC format, and it sounds, I really have a lot of sympathy for the situation they're placed in. So what can we do as a district to help them with that potential increased difficulty with their particular curriculum that has proven very successful?
Through the president to Dave Donnelly, certainly the curriculum there isn't a proposed change to any curriculum for Birchwood ABC. However, there obviously there's it's not a perfect world, and I want to say that I don't have perfect answers. So this really going to take the entire community. It was the schools were placed together due to an emergency, an unforeseen emergency, and we're going to do our best to work with the people involved. And it wasn't our purpose wasn't just to speak to Eagle River elementary parents. There was a deliberate action to speak to all of Eagle River, including the receiving schools, as well as others who are in feeder schools, older kids or younger, the community who have younger kids going into these programs. I am happy that we have choices and a strong belief that parents and kids love their schools, so I want it to work. I just don't have the answers to do so. It's going to take the people involved in the programs to work together to do this, but we are willing to do whatever it takes to have a successful year and preserve the academic and behavioral expectations at each of our schools. Thank you.
And Mr. Donnelly, I would just add that I believe this is the purpose of our ad hoc committee, is to help work on this with the community, school districts, parents, and everyone else, so that the decisions are made are hopefully those that are in the best interest of everyone. And so I look forward to us approving this resolution. Mr. Hallman.
And I would echo that because we have the time and the ability in this case to bring in parents, staff, stakeholders to really just be able to have a one-on-one or 1-on-10 conversation about what can work, what will work, and what the options are in that area. I think this idea is a good way for us to go forward when decisions fit the time frame and the ability to put it in the hands of people that are working in those schools are volunteering in those schools every day.
Okay, any other board discussion? Ms. Mitchell?
I definitely support, I think every board member does recognize, and the superintendent recognize the value of getting, really being intentional about getting community input, because this is going to impact pretty much every student in Eagle River. So I appreciate the beginnings of interest that we're seeing and the letters we're getting, and hopefully we'll be able to involve many, many community members and parents and students in these discussions.
Okay, student vote, please.
Yes.
Board members, please vote. And that passes with 7 yeas.
I'd like to introduce ASD Memorandum Number 121, Adoption of Tentative Agreement, Teamsters Local 959 Bus Drivers and Attendants 2018 through 2021.
Second.
Is there any public testimony on Memorandum 121? No public testimony. Is there any board discussion? Oh. Okay. Don't be shy. And you probably need to turn that mic. Oh, there you got it.
There we go. My name is Dale Miller, I'm business representative with Teamster Local 959. I just come here to testify in support of this. I hope that the board realizes the work that went into getting this contract. I appreciate the bargaining team that the board assembled for this. I think we work collaboratively and have an agreement to continue to provide the best service the Anchorage School District can have for transporting the most valuable resources, which are the children. These folks get up every morning, take them to school, bring them home safely. This is, once again, I think a reasonable contract for the economic times that we're in. And we're collaborative on it, so I just urge your approval.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, Dr. Bishop.
Madam President, I would like to state as well that since we were just on the earthquake, that our bus drivers did a phenomenal job. We had approximately, really, about 10 to 12,000 students on buses at the time of the earthquake, and our drivers transported them to pickup locations, sat with them, worked with teachers, communicated who was on the buses, who weren't, assisted in releasing to parents. Our bus drivers were a valued, highly valued part of our team.
And I'll just add that I can't say enough. I think our bus drivers are definitely a valuable asset along with all of our staff and teachers. But I know when my kids were going to school, and I have a special needs student at one time also, just the knowledge that they were being safely transported and to and from homeschool, and I didn't have to worry. It's a big responsibility, and I appreciate it, as I'm sure all board members do. Thank you. Any other board discussion? Okay, student vote, please.
Yes.
Members, please vote.
Unless you did your voting box come through. I voted. Oh, there it is.
And that motion passes with 7 yeas. Okay, we're gonna move on to non-action items. Is there any non-action item that board members want to pull?
I'd like to pull number 117, number 114, and number 120.
I'm gonna pull, one, just because there's been some changes, and, I think we should, maybe hear about what those changes are. Any others? So we have 1, 3, 5, and 6.
I'd like to pull number 4.
Number 4?
That's already pulled.
Oh, okay, it's already pulled, sorry, I missed that. So is it 1, 3, 4, 5, and 6?
Not 3.
What did I have? Not 3. Oh, okay, sorry, I misunderstood. Okay, so 1, 4, 5, and 6. Okay, okay. So at this time on memorandum 024 on the 6-year capital improvement plan, it does say that it's been revised, and so maybe just a quick.
Madam President, as Tom Roth is coming forward, the recommendation was to not change the projects. However, the revision is for the $4 million that went through the assembly that we added. So we changed the total amount with the board's guidance. However, as will be shared, if you have any specific questions, just knowing time, the additions were, and the revision was brought back to the kayak committee, and they agreed leave things the same until we answer some of the forthcoming questions in regard to Eagle River. But the revision was for the $4 million additional dollars that did pass the assembly last week.
Okay, and just that, so that will move forward without any other revisions until next year.
To the president,
Oh.
just to speak to Dr. Bishop's comment, yes. So we did modify year 1 based on the additional $4 million that was added and approved for the assembly to go on the ballot. But due to some of the uncertainties with the earthquake damage, we are advocating that the remainder not change. We did consult with the kayak, and they concurred with that recommendation to the board.
Thank you. Are there any other board questions? All right, thank you, gentlemen. Just wanted clarification on that. Thank you. Okay, moving on to number 4. And who pulled number 4? Alicia? Ms. Hildy?
Just pulling it up.
Dana Mitchell pulled number 4.
Oh, you pulled,
Oh,
it doesn't, I don't care. But you pulled something before that.
I pulled 4, 5, and 6.
Oh,
okay. Well, you can both speak to it, but.
Sure, I just wanted to say that we went through this in the governance committee and talked about it and heard administrative consideration on it, and this is one that we did submit to the full board for consideration on having a more neutral policy on student retention and in promoting parental involvement in that process. So I just wanted to say we talked about it and recommend it.
Ms. Mitchell?
So I think the intent is good, and we all want kids to be proficient before they pass on to the next grade. I'm a little bit concerned about, I don't have any big issues with the way this is worded because it does involve the parents. I guess what I have read a little bit on best practices around the country around these areas, and I think we're making great strides, and this is obviously one of our top goals for the district. Before you retain a child, their districts have special summer programs to address reading deficiencies. They work with parents in the home to put together a program to help them understand how to support their children's reading, and we know that in a lot of our families, some of those supports aren't really possible, and so I guess I would want to know, I know that we do retain a very small percentage of our students now, and maybe I missed it. Have we talked about when they have been retained and then get promoted after that? Has it helped? Have we had them just simply repeat the same year, or have they?
Through the president, I just want to share that we didn't come prepared to share all those data. However, administration feels confident that this is a good policy. It involves the parent. It's in the best interest of the student.
it supports teachers' opinions about children and their learning, to be able to communicate that with parents. If the board would like more data on that and the numbers, we can certainly provide that, whether it worked, whether it didn't work. I mean, that might be the eye of the beholder, but we extensively looked through this in our academic policy. Mark, we don't have concerns with the way it's written as is, because it does allow for that discussion where it should take place in the best interest of the student.
There's just new questions.
Through the president, I think it helps if we take a little more expansive definition of the word retention. When we think of retention, people automatically think fail the year, repeat the year. If you think about retention, meaning if a student didn't know what needs to be learned this week, that someone quickly intervenes and tries to retain that student to review what was missed. If you think of it that way, retention, it looks more like remediation. And so what schools around the country are trying to do is to try to do those retentions, to do the remediation quicker, so we're not waiting. That's what the WIN groups, when you talk about the new reading program, when a student goes to a special group and gets special help and support. But as far as this policy specifically, if we bring in the parents and we work really hard to look at academic proficiency as part of that discussion, we don't see any problem with the policy as it's written. We promote it. We think we still have a lot of work to do to figure out how do we help kids who are well behind before they hit third grade. So that retaining students today to get caught up quicker is going to be a really critical part of this. Not waiting till the year is over and then repeating an entire year, as opposed to repeating this week what I didn't learn.
So, well, since I had my head this way first, Mr. Holland.
I'd like to say it would help to have the data next week on how many elementary retentions for a whole year we've had for the last couple of years, and also what the failure rate at secondary for specific classes looks like. Because I know when you get into high school, it's sort of hard to say whether or not someone's retained or not. But if they miss a couple of core classes, fail a couple of core classes, then they're not going to graduate on time. I taught for some time in a district. I don't want to name the district because there's no need for that. But it was clear that teachers weren't supposed to retain kids, or that you had to be prepared to cross a high bar to do that. And what I'm concerned about is I think the policy reads well. We don't have any problem with it. The question is, if a teacher moves to suggest a kid be retained under this policy, do they then catch a lot of static from various folks who feel like that reflects poorly on the school or on the district or on the performance goals that we're trying to attain? Because there are stated policies and there are unstated policies. So it would be helpful to see what we're doing right at the moment, because I don't think right now there's anything to keep anyone from acting in the scope of this policy. And I can't imagine that a student would ever be retained without talking to parents. And you do look at the social side and you look at the academic side. I think it's all there. The question is, what are we really doing, and what are we really going to encourage our education staff to do in the real world? And if we're wording something rather nicely, but we expect them to not ever actually utilize it, I'd rather we not put it into the paper. But I may be wrong, because it's a big district and things happen in other buildings that nobody ever knows about. So the data on what we've been doing would be very helpful. Thank you.
Ms. Gilding?
I just wanted to mention the link I sent earlier on the MECAC from 2013, their report on this kind of issue, and one of the parts of it, anytime we can use like work people actually did, that makes me very excited, right? Like to value their time and effort. So they already looked at this and they identified all the best practices in one column, and then ASD, what we're working on, and it fits kind of right into that list in that report. So I find that very value the time that people put into that, and I'm glad to see our district moving, toward those best practices.
Mr. Donnelly?
Thank you. The reason I've sponsored this is because I do think this is the best practice. And because I heard from many members, parents and members of the public. This would be the first time that we actually have in the policy that the parents will be involved in it. I know they're typically involved in it now, but this actually puts it in the policy that they shall be given significant consideration by the study team when consider what the parents want to do. I've heard from a lot of parents that wanted their children held back for their own, they wanted to and weren't allowed to. And it was just yesterday, I mean, I've been hearing this a lot. I was at a Super Bowl party yesterday, and I was told about 2 children at one school where the teachers agreed that it would be in the students' best interest to retain them. The parents agreed it was in the best interest to retain them, but they were not allowed to be retained. Because of the existing policy is a presumption, a strong absolute presumption that students advance pretty much no matter what. And I think we should think about this proposed change. Is this better than what we currently have? And I don't think there's any question that this is better than what we currently have, because this adopts a neutral analysis based on the best interest of the child and guarantees a significant contribution or input on the part of the parents. And we don't have that now. And I've heard that from many, many parents.
Mr. Foster?
One of the questions that Board Member Donnelly asked when we were applying was whether I would support a neutral policy. And I believe neutral policy is appropriate. I'm not certain this is as neutral as it should be given best practice and research. And I think Deputy Superintendent Stock really referred to the core. How do we make sure we're getting progress all through K, 1, 2, and 3? That's the core business we are in. And that's the core business that's already in the promotion language. Students shall progress through the school district's grade levels by demonstrating growth. That's our core business. Adding the proficiency layer early on in early grades typically measures circumstances that are not related to our value add as a school district, as a school, and teachers. So we may be trying to address a problem here about which we are doing really good work, growing students, and the bar we may be setting may be higher than is reasonable given the starting point. And I would submit to you some data along the lines of how fast does Anchorage or Alaska grow its students relative to others. And I think you'll find we grow faster than most other places. And when you look at the Council of Great City Schools, Anchorage may be at the top of that pack at student growth. So I want to be very cautious in how we treat those key early years so we don't upset our growth path across the grade span. Florida has tried this and they've crashed. They get high 4th grade scores in NAEP and they don't do so well as they get in the outer years. So we want to be very careful about the balance. So I'm looking forward to working through this and seeing if we've really constructed a neutral policy that still retains the growth that we've been able to achieve and then improves upon that. Thank you.
I'm going to speak as a parent who I initiated retention of my child and was fought the whole way. And it wasn't the teacher, it wasn't the school district that initiated it, it was me. He did not know his alphabets. He could not speak full sentences. There was a lot of things that he could not do. And I understand the issue of trying to move our students on and working with them, But I felt as a parent, it was in his best interest to hold him back, and I like that thought, and I listened to all the reasons. You know, they're more apt to drop out of school, they're more apt to do this, and I understood all that. I listened to everyone. But as a parent, I like to know that I have a say in the education of my student. And I think it's important that we keep that verbiage in there and that parents are included in this discussion. Yes, Mr.
If you
Donnelly.
look at my response to Mr. Donnelly on the tape, you'll find that was the one point I emphasized in my response.
So I would support this. Any other comments? Mr. Donnelly?
Since folks out there don't have it in front of them, the proposal, I just want to be very clear that it starts out by saying, in the best interest of the student.
Right.
That's the key here.
Right.
I mean, there are going to be children when it's not in their best interest to hold them back. But we should have that as the essential question that's presented in this decision-making process. And that's what this new language does.
Okay, any other discussion on this? Okay, number 5. I believe that was you, Ms. Hildy?
Yeah, I was just want to make note that we've kind of, we went over the 800,000 mark for our upper limit spending authority. Is that the full, our managed budget is 804 million for, you know, what's the number we say when the amount of our budget is?
Operations first.
Right, we do have a total budget with our grants and other things, and then an operational budget, but I don't believe the actual number crossed over 800,000. It's under that, but our upper limit authority is different than that. It's 700, give me that number, gentlemen.
700 something.
Through the President, our total managed funds is going to be 804.661 or 661 million. So we did go over in the total upper limit request we'll do to the municipality a little over 800 million. Last year we were at 786 million.
Yes, Ms. Hildy.
So when somebody asks me what is the total budget of the Anchorage School District, I will say 804 million.
That is correct, and generally whenever we discuss it out in public, we do go ahead and say our general operating fund is going to be 572 million, and then discuss what else goes into it: transportation, food service, capital projects.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Well, let's see, what's the next one? Okay, yeah.
To be clear though, the debt service is,
Just for the general operating budget. Is that what you mean,
right. I think it's, to your point, it's actually really important to share that in regard to all the different funds.
the tax base for what the municipality gives us for the general fund would not include all the grants and all the other funds. It's really the state foundation formula, and then that component that's the city's required local effort, and then the city's maximum effort, which, as you're aware, have provided that for many years, but that would not include grants and student nutrition and other funds within the district.
What is our capital budget?
Are you referring to the $10 million that we include in here? Or generally for the upper limit spending authority, we've included about $10 million each year in the event we get appropriated state legislative grants to preserve that upper limit authority in case we do get those. Other capital expenditures are voter driven, so those are outside of what the but we have considered the upper limit spending.
Yes, Ms. Hildy?
And just to clarify, we had talked about that upper limit spending authority, that was something the board approved to go over and above that we might not normally do because of the earthquake. And we will likely be reimbursed for that and the number will go down, or?
What actually happened in December, we didn't know the timelines for when we would expect state grants, FEMA money. We didn't know how much it would cost at that point in time. That was very shortly after the earthquake. So when we increased the upper limit authority, we really just increased it to a point that we knew any of the short-term bills and invoices coming in, that we were allowed to pay that if it exceeded our annual cost. It also meant if we got state money, which we haven't, or FEMA money, then we would have been able to receive that. If you look at this current budget that's in front of you, you look underneath grants in the back, you'll see state legislative grants, and I think we put $8.75 million as a placeholder for the discussions we're going to have over the next couple of weeks. In that, we knew that $3.5 million was the K-3 PTR. We're still developing other ones. We still have plenty of time for board input, feedback, and directives. And that amount, you know, typically for grants, revenue equals expenses. So you can put a dollar amount in, like we put $10 million a year for state capital grants. Very rarely do we get any, but that cap is there, that upper limit allows you to receive it if we get funds. In fact, we were quite surprised a couple of years ago. We got money for a roof that had been damaged and we had paid for out of fund balance. And we were pleasantly surprised when the state, in fact, did give us money. So occasionally that gets used. For the state legislative grants, it would be something similar to that. We would put an amount of money equal to the number of state legislative grants that the board believes we would go after. If you don't get the money, you can't spend it. It's like the designated general fund at state level. They could put $50 million for UAA, but if they only get $20 million in tuition, then they can only spend $20 million.
Okay.
It's a placeholder. So to your,
Officially on record, it's 804, but it's technically a placeholder if those funds don't come in. So it's kind of a tricky answer when you talk to the public. Yeah.
Thank you, gentlemen. And the last one that was pulled was revision to BP Memorandum 120. You pulled that one?
We did discuss this during governance and voted not to submit it to the full board for consideration. I think it was just added to the agenda by preference, or I'm not sure, but we did review it, and I included in the governance report our discussion of it, or what was presented.
But I not.
My understanding of the practice is that we make a motion to amend the agenda, or the board president. I think the board president can just add things to the agenda. So that's fine. I'm just trying to clarify the process.
Yeah, Dave, I thought you said Alicia had seconded.
You agreed to second it.
No, if as a motion. So if we want to add something to the agenda, we come to the meeting and make a motion, and then I did agree to second it, and then we would vote to add it to the agenda. Or the board president can put things on the agenda, so that's also fine. It's not like there's something wrong here. I just want to clarify the process. If we talk about it in governance, my expectation was perhaps that if we don't recommend it to the board, that you would go through the motion to amend the agenda process.
So speaking on that, I do think we need to, and the reason we put it on the agenda is because Mr. Donnelly had said that it would be seconded. And I think one thing I want to caution all of our committees is we do need to follow our committee guidance. And the purpose of committees is to vet these type of things on whether they should come to the full board or not. So I would hope that with our committees, if you're not going to put it forth during that committee, then agreeing to second it later on or whatever is not appropriate. It should be done through the committee, and the committee should move it forward, unless there's any other disagreement with that.
And then as I always say during the committee meeting, if we don't agree to move it forward, you're always welcome to present it to the full board as your own motion to amend the agenda, but then the whole board has to vote to amend the agenda.
Well, they have to get a second.
A second and a full vote just a second.
the policy. That's not the policy.
To add to the agenda?
Yeah, the policy was
So
to
that's
get a
the
second.
confusion, okay. So we'll review that?
Yeah, I think we need to review that, but we need to follow whatever the policy
Okay,
is.
thank you.
Yeah.
So maybe I just misunderstood.
So the thing that I know we have new business next, but the thing I'd like to do at this time is to appoint those committees that the board has supported through the resolutions and the chairs. And so on the first committee with Committee on Student Health, Wellness, and Nutrition and Learning, I think that given our constraints on the other committee, that a lot of board members are going to be participating in this, and this committee may take a little bit longer to come back with a recommendation. So I'd like to co-chair this committee, if that's okay, and I'd like for that to be Mr. Foster and Mrs. Mitchell. If you guys are okay with co-chairing that committee, I would certainly appreciate it. And then I would, because that's two committee members, is there a third member that would like to serve on that committee?
This is the recess one?
Yes. Ms. Hildy, then you will also be on that committee. That'll make 3 board members on the committee. As far as the Chugach Eagle River committee, I'd like to appoint Ms. Snelling as chair of that committee, being that she's part of the Eagle River community. And at this time, I would ask for board members who would like to serve on that committee. I'd rather it be, I don't mind it being people from the other committee, but it would be helpful. If we don't have anyone else, that's fine. I'm gonna be at both of them, so, and I'm there as a, right. So, if there's no one else, I'll accept Ms. Mitchell.
Well, I am interested in being on it. I'm a little concerned about the timing, only because we have the legislative fly-in. I'm gonna be out of town through the 14th, you're out of town through the 12th. So I don't know how much that will restrict my ability to be okay.
Okay.
If he's on it, he can come to that first one, and then all the others that I see.
I expect you to work from there.
Well, we'll be working down there.
So my 3 committee members are Ms. Snelling, Ms. Mitchell, and Mr. Foster on this other committee also. I just want to state that the importance of the Chugach Eagle River Committee comes first, and we have a 2-week window, I believe, and, well, not 2 weeks, but we have a very short, 2 months. We have a very short window in which to enact getting community members involved in the best possible way, and I will be attending that committee as a ad hoc committee member. Okay, we're set. Is there any other new business at this time? Yes.
Madam President, thank you for that clarity in regard to the timing of that. And in the work session today, we did share in regard to the Eagle River, Chugach Eagle River, whichever, however I think we put Chugach Eagle River Committee. FEMA has declared, it's tied into the declaration by the disaster at the federal level of a disaster, and FEMA is on site, and within 60 days of our first work with them, we need to have not a detailed plan, but a broad plan of how we are going to move forward. And so it's imperative that that committee is there. And the reason it's 2 months, I don't want anyone to feel like we're rushing through this, is because with that federal notification of a disaster, we have a high ability of negotiating great outcomes for that community and our whole community in regard to rebuilding schools and having the funding to do so. So it's strictly a process by which would behoove us all economically in our pockets if we could come with a set of recommendations earlier rather than later with FEMA.
And Dr. Bishop, I will let you assign what other staff members you'd like to participate in those committees if you'd let the various committee chairs know. Is there any other new business? Okay, no other new business. Do we have any final public testimony? Would anybody like to testify on anything at this point? It would be on non-action or non-action or non-agenda items. So anything that you would like to testify on. Okay. At this time, this is when we do our comments and communications, and I just want to say this as school board and administration. If you have any comments or communications, this is the time.
Madam President?
Yes.
We wanted to offer administration that if we would love to provide anyone at your convenience further follow-up on the budget. If you had any questions in regard to your amendments, how they would just let us know and we will accommodate those. Thank you.
And just a reminder, we're going to have those amendments in, and I really hope by the end of Monday. So no comments. Remember, visit your school. Ms. Mitchell.
Yeah, I just wanted to, first of all, I know there's been just so much going on this year. I want to really thank the administration and all of the teachers and everybody who stuck with all of the stress of the year. And last week I made a concerted effort to get into several of my schools, and it's amazing what's going on in every classroom every day. The magic, the enthusiasm, the engaged learning. I was walking around with a principal of one of the schools, and she saw a little boy who has had issues with attendance, and he said, "Are you going to do the cheer? Are you going to do the cheer?" She said, "Absolutely." I guess every day he comes to school, she goes and does a cheer for him. Attendance is an issue at many of our schools, and I think that's something, everybody continues to tackle, because if they aren't there, we can't teach them. But I just am so impressed whenever I am spending a lot of time in our schools at the passion and the love and the professionalism, and thank you.
And it certainly makes it all worthwhile, doesn't it? Yeah. So thank you to everyone, board members, administration, teachers, everyone, for the job that you do every day for our kids. And on that note, we are adjourned. Thank you.
9:34. It could have been 9:30.